She told you she wanted control. She said it softly at first, as if it were a confession born from the marrow of her soul, a desire as sacred as breath. She framed it as clarity, as liberation, as the modern anthem of self-possession. You believed her because the world told you to. Because every book, every smiling talk show host, every social media sermon preached the same gospel. Women crave control, and a real man honors that craving. So you stood back. You softened your edges. You made room for her authority, thinking it would bring peace, thinking it would bring love, thinking it would bring the fiery, consuming desire you secretly longed for. But it didn't, did it? No, what followed was confusion, chaos, a slow and silent erosion of attraction, until one morning you woke to find the heat in her eyes gone cold. It felt like betrayal, but it wasn't. It was something far worse. It was disinterest. This is where Niccolò Machiavelli enters, not as a historical curiosity, not as a footnote in dusty political theory, but as a knife through the lies you've swallowed whole. He would tell you plainly, desire and control are enemies. The more control she holds, the less desire can survive. For desire is not born in the sterile air of equality or the clinical balance of power. It is born in the storm, in uncertainty, in the dark, thrilling spaces where she cannot quite predict you, cannot fully possess you, cannot control the terrain of your mind or the rhythm of your ambition. This is the lie she doesn't even know she's telling, that she wants control, that she wants to lead the dance. What she truly wants, what ignites her at the level beneath language, is the opposite. She wants to feel the gravitational pull of a man who cannot be conquered. She wants the intoxication of being carried into a world she does not control, a world built from your will, your direction, your unshakable center. This is the thesis you were never supposed to hear. And once you understand it, once you feel it in your bones, instead of just knowing it in your mind, everything changes. Because this is not about games. It is not about manipulation. It is about understanding the architecture, desire itself, an architecture older than civilization, older than morality, older than the words we use to dress it up and make it polite. Machiavelli saw it clearly in the theater of politics, but its shadow stretches into the theater of romance, into the private wars between men and women, where power and passion twist around each other like smoke and flame. You've been told to be nice, to be agreeable, to hand over the reins as a gesture of love. They told you she would admire you for it, that it would prove your modernity, your emotional intelligence, your worth. But the animal core of her being does not worship the man who yields. It does not crave the man who bends. It yearns for the man who stands so firmly in his sovereignty that the world itself seems to bend around him. Machiavelli would smirk at your confusion. He would tell you power is never given, only taken. And the man who gives it away freely does not look enlightened. He looks weak. So here is the uncomfortable truth. If you want her desire, stop trying to give her control. Because she doesn't want it. Not really. She wants you. Machiavelli lived in a world of daggers hidden behind smiles, of kings trembling under the weight of their own thrones, of republics collapsing when the people grew soft and their leaders grew weaker still. He wrote not for the comfortable, but for the ambitious, for the men willing to see reality without its mask. And what he saw was this: power, once surrendered, never returns willingly. It does not migrate back to its original host like some loyal bird. It must be seized. It must be enforced. The prince, his infamous manual of rule, was not about cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was about clarity, about the laws that govern human nature, whether we choose to see them or not. And chief among those laws is this: those who pretend power does not matter are always devoured by those who know that it does. Now, look at romance through that lens. Look at the dance of desire between man and woman. The modern world tells you this dance has evolved beyond dominance and submission, beyond power and surrender, beyond the primal currents that shaped it for millennia. But Machiavelli would laugh low, cold, and certain. He would tell you the theater has changed. The costumes are different, the language more polite, but the laws are eternal. The woman who claims she wants full control is like the people of Florence who begged for a republic, thinking freedom alone would protect them. It did not. It led to chaos, then to weakness, then to the rise of men stronger than the ones they overthrew. Because people crave what they do not name: security, strength, the shadow of authority to push against and to be held by. So it is with her. She does not want to lead you. She wants to feel you unshaken by her storms. She wants to test your walls and find them made of stone, not sand. She will never admit this because the modern tongue has lost the words for such things, but her body knows it, her instincts know it, her very desire knows it. You've seen this play out, haven't you? The man who yields everything in the name of love finds himself tolerated but never truly wanted. The man who hides his sharpness, who trades his fire for comfort, discovers too late that comfort breeds contempt. And the man who commands himself, who stands in his own gravity, who leads not by shouting, but by moving through the world with direction so undeniable it bends reality around him, this man is met with something else entirely. Respect, hunger, devotion so fierce it frightens him sometimes. This is not an accident. It is law. But the law cuts both ways. If you misuse it, if you mistake tyranny for strength, if you confuse cruelty with leadership, desire dies just as quickly as if you had surrendered everything. For power without purpose is chaos, and chaos breeds not desire, but fear. Here lies the razor's edge Machiavelli understood. Power must be felt, not flaunted. It must be directed, not scattered. A ruler who terrifies without leading is soon destroyed. A man who dominates without purpose is soon alone. So the art, the real art, is sovereignty. The ability to hold the frame of reality so firmly that she feels it all around her, yet never doubts she is safe within it. And this leads us to the first revelation. She does not truly want control, because control kills the very thing she craves most, the pulse of desire. That lives only in the presence of your strength. And so we arrive at the threshold of our first turning point. Because the question now becomes darker, sharper, more dangerous. If surrendering control kills desire, then how does a man reclaim it without turning love into war? The answer begins with the architecture of power itself. Machiavelli insisted that the most successful rulers understood power not as brute force alone, but as theater, as psychology, as the shaping of perception as much as reality. He told princes to appear merciful, even when ruthless, to seem generous, even when calculating, to cloak the steel of command in velvet so that people obeyed willingly, even eagerly. Do you see the brilliance? It was never about tyranny. It was about mastery, about governing both the world outside and the emotions within. Because a prince who cannot master himself cannot master anything. This law moves through love as inexorably as it moves through politics. A man who cannot lead himself will never lead her desire. The first realm you must conquer is always the internal one. Your impulses, your need for approval, your fear of conflict, your craving for comfort. She feels all of it, every hesitation, every flicker of self-doubt. And each time you surrender to it, each time you bend not from strategy, but from weakness, something silent dies between you. Because here is the truth no one tells you. Attraction is not born from equality. It is born from polarity, from tension, from the magnetic field between direction and surrender, between the immovable and the yielding. Two poles of the same force, and when you blur them, when you both become soft, interchangeable, gray, the current disappears. Machiavelli would call this the death of a state. In love, it is the death of desire. So how does a man reclaim this without falling into cruelty? Without becoming the caricature of masculinity the modern world mocks, but secretly fears? By doing exactly what the most cunning rulers of history did. He leads with direction, not domination. He becomes the immovable center, not the overbearing tyrant. He learns that strength does not roar, it hums. It radiates. It pulls her into its orbit, without demanding, without pleading, without breaking into explanations or apologies. This is the first pillar. A man who governs himself governs desire. And when he does, she feels it instantly. Because women have always been attuned to power, not the cheap theater of arrogance or loudness, but the deeper current of sovereignty. The man who needs her approval bleeds it out of his eyes, his voice, his posture. She knows it before he speaks. She feels it before he touches her. And the man who does not need it, who lives by his own code, whose will cuts through the world like a blade through silk, this man wakes something ancient inside her. Not fear, not resentment, but the quiet thrill of surrendering to a force stronger than her own moods, her own tests, even her own words about wanting control. Because at the level beneath speech, beneath culture, beneath even her own conscious awareness, the feminine longs to be claimed by the masculine, not possessed like property, but led into a reality she did not have to build herself. This is the second pillar. Desire flows where certainty lives. And so the paradox sharpens its edge. She says she wants control because modernity taught her to speak that way. But her body speaks an older language. It waits for you to remember it. We have reached our first checkpoint. Here is the brutal truth so far. The more control she has, the less she feels. And the question now cuts deeper than before. If you reclaim control, not as cruelty, but as sovereignty, what happens when she resists? What happens when the modern creed of equality collides with the ancient current of desire? The answer will demand something from you, far greater than charm or clever words. It will demand your transformation. Transformation begins when you stop negotiating with the parts of yourself that keep you weak. Because weakness wears many disguises. Sometimes it wears the mask of kindness. Sometimes it speaks in the gentle tones of compromise, telling you you're doing the right thing by bending, by yielding, by silencing the edge of your own masculinity so you can keep the peace. But Machiavelli understood this peace for what it really was. Not harmony, not stability, but decay. The quiet, creeping rot that sets in when power is handed away like coins tossed to beggars, until nothing is left but resentment, confusion, and the inevitable rise of someone stronger. And here is where the modern man finds himself torn in two. On one side, the world demands his softness, his constant accommodation, his willingness to prove he is safe, non-threatening, endlessly yielding to her moods, her whims, her shifting demands for freedom and control in the same breath. On the other side, the raw laws of desire demand his strength, his direction, his refusal to hand over the frame of reality, no matter how loudly the culture screams at him to do so. This is why men feel trapped, because no one told them the truth. She tests not because she hates you, but because she needs to feel the strength of the walls around her world. When she pushes against them and they crumble, she loses faith. When she pushes and they hold, when you hold something entirely different, rises in her chest, respect, admiration, and beneath it, the slow ignition of desire she cannot manufacture on her own. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to confuse love with security. He said it was far safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose, but the highest form of rule was the one where both coexisted. Love rooted in the knowledge that rebellion would shatter against the stone of your will. Apply this to modern romance, and the principle burns brighter than ever. Because love without respect rots into contempt, and respect without strength dies the moment she realizes she can control you. This is the collision point between modern ideals and ancient truths. She was told she should want control, and so she believes she does. You are told you should hand it to her, and so you do. And both of you wake up one day confused as to why the fire is gone, why the intimacy feels thin and brittle, why she looks at you not with hunger, but with irritation disguised as boredom. It is because polarity has died. And polarity dies when power is handed away instead of carried with quiet, unshakable authority. So the man who would reclaim this does not fight her for control like a rival. He does not scream for it like a tyrant. He embodies it. He lives it so fully, so naturally, that it ceases to be a point of debate. This is the third pillar. A man who becomes the frame does not need to argue for it. She may resist it first. She may flail against it like a bird testing the bars of a cage, but this is no cage. This is the cathedral of your presence, the world you have built through discipline, direction, and a refusal to betray your own center. And the moment she realizes this strength does not seek to crush her, but to carry her, everything changes. Because what she truly fears is not your dominance. It is your weakness, the man too timid to lead her, the man too unsure to hold her storms without collapsing, the man who confuses her tests for cruelty instead of invitations to prove the ground beneath her feet will not give way. And when you finally understand this, when you stop resenting the tests and start meeting them with immovable certainty, you discover the paradox Machiavelli would have admired most. The man who refuses to yield to her demand for control is the only man to whom she will freely surrender. And now the stakes rise again, because the question no longer concerns her desire alone. It concerns you. Who must you become to wield this kind of strength without turning to stone yourself? What must you burn away to carry both power and love in the same hands? The next step will demand nothing less than the death of the man you are told to be. The death of the man you are told to be begins in silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of decision. The moment when the noise of the world, the endless advice, the shaming voices, the soft demands for your compliance falls away, and you are left alone with the single, unyielding question. Will you lead? Because leadership is not a style. It is not a mood. It is not a set of tactics whispered by self-help books promising confidence like pills sold in the market of broken men. It is an identity, a spine of iron beneath the flesh of your daily life. Machiavelli wrote for men who understood that the throne is not handed to you because you smiled politely. It is taken because you rose before anyone else did, because you saw clearly what others refused to see, because you were willing to be hated before you would ever be ignored. Now translate this into the theater of love. The modern man was told to be safe above all else, to be agreeable, predictable, endlessly transparent, a soft hand and an open diary of feelings. And yet she grows restless beneath his constant accessibility, his easy compliance, the way he orbits her moods instead of drawing her into the orbit of his vision. She does not crave the man who kneels. She craves the man who builds the temple she chooses to enter. But here lies the razor-edge edge again. The temple must stand because you believe in it, not because you believe she will praise you for it. The moment your direction depends on her validation, you have already surrendered the frame. And once surrendered, it does not return. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely solely on the love of the people. Love without fear of consequence curdles into rebellion. But love entwined with respect, born from the unshakable sense that you will not betray your own command. This is the soil in which loyalty grows like an oak. She is not looking for cruelty. She is looking for that oak, for the man whose life already carries weight before she steps into it, for the man who will not fracture beneath the storm of her emotions, who will not soften into shapelessness when she demands he prove himself again and again. Because yes, she will demand it. The same way the people demand the prince show his strength not once, but continually, endlessly, until even his silence carries the weight of 1,000 declarations. This is the fourth pillar. Strength untested is only theory. And so her tests are not obstacles to desire. They are the forge in which it either burns hotter or dies forever. The weak man sees her resistance as cruelty. The strong man sees it as confirmation, because he knows what she does not yet have words for, that beneath every test lies a single question. Will you remain who you are, even when I push against it? If you fail, she grows cold. If you stand, she grows quiet. And in that quiet, the fire returns. Because the man who does not shatter is the man she can finally fall against without fear. So here is the brutal revelation at this second checkpoint. Desire does not survive the collapse of respect, and respect does not survive the collapse of power. Now the question sharpens to its final edge. If the modern world demands your softness, while desire demands your strength, how do you build a life where both passion and peace survive beneath your rule? The answer is not in words. It is in the man you must become next. The man you must become next is not born from theory. He is forged in fire, in the death of comfort. In the destruction of the false self, the world told you to wear like a badge of progress. Because Machiavelli, cold-eyed and merciless in his clarity, would tell you the same thing the centuries have whispered: power belongs to the man who claims it, not the man who requests it, not the man who waits for permission to live as he was meant to live. He claims it first over himself. This is where most men fail. They imagine power as something external: money, status, influence, the approval of others, when the truth is so much simpler and so much harder. The first empire you conquer is the one inside your own chest. Your laziness, your hesitation, your hunger for validation, your fear of her disappointment. These are the rebels inside your gates, and they will betray you every time if you do not crush them first. Machiavelli warned that the prince who cannot command his own city will never command the loyalty of his people. And the man who cannot command his own impulses will never command respect from the woman standing in front of him. Because she feels it, always. She feels when your words hide insecurity instead of authority. She feels when your ambition dies beneath excuses. She feels when you abandon your own mission to orbit hers, because you fear her displeasure more than you fear the death of your own purpose. And nothing kills desire faster. So here is the law Machiavelli would carve into the walls of every man's mind: sovereignty first, or nothing follows. Because the moment you govern yourself, the moment you live by direction instead of reaction, everything shifts. Your presence hardens. Your voice changes. Your decisions carry the weight of inevitability. You stop negotiating with the world. Stop pleading for its understanding. Stop explaining yourself to those who have not earned the right to question you. And when this happens, when your very existence hums with the quiet power of a man who will not betray his own command, something ancient moves in the women around you. Respect first, then curiosity, then the slow, undeniable pull of desire. Not because you performed some trick, not because you memorized the right words or the right gestures, but because women have always been drawn to power, rightly held the way forests are drawn to sunlight. It is not conscious. It is not logical. It is older than language, older than morality, older than the illusions of modern equality that tell her she should want something else entirely. This is why she says she wants control, but grows restless when she has it. Because control kills the current. And the man who gives it to her, thinking it will make her happy, finds himself tolerated like a friend, not wanted like a lover. But the man who carries power without cruelty, who leads without apology, who governs himself so completely that his world feels inevitable around him, this is the man she follows freely. Machiavelli understood this paradox better than anyone. The prince who seizes power without purpose becomes a tyrant. The man who seeks control only to inflate his own ego becomes a joke. But the one who wields it in service of something larger than himself, in service of order, of direction, of a vision that pulls others upward instead of crushing them downward. This man rules not by fear alone, not by love alone, but by the fusion of both into something stronger than either. And in the theater of romance, this law does not weaken. It burns hotter, because the woman who feels this sovereignty in you, this refusal to betray your own command, this certainty that bends the chaos of the world into shape around your presence, this woman does not dream of controlling you. She dreams of being taken somewhere she cannot take herself. And she will never say it outright. She will simply feel it. So we arrive at the final truth, the one hidden beneath every test, every argument, every moment where she swore she wanted control, but felt her desire slip through her fingers like sand. It was never about control. It was always about you, the man you are, the frame you carry, the world you build around yourself, that she either steps into with fire in her eyes or abandons because she cannot feel its walls. Machiavelli would smirk here, as though the centuries themselves had proven him right. He told princes to expect rebellion, not because people hated strength, but because they needed to feel it. They needed to know their ruler would not shatter when the world turned hostile, that his authority would not vanish when tested, that his command was not a costume worn for applause, but a spine of iron forged in silence and difficulty. Women test for the same reason, not to break you, but to feel you unbreakable. And here lies the choice every man faces. You can remain what the modern world told you to be soft, endlessly yielding, allergic to conflict, mistaking weakness for virtue and passivity for love. You can keep handing her the frame, the direction, the control she swears she wants, until she looks at you one morning with eyes full of everything except desire. Or you can choose the harder path, the path of the prince who governs himself before he governs anything else, the man who stops waiting for permission to lead his own life, who stops apologizing for his strength, who stops softening every edge until nothing of him remains. This man does not dominate for its own sake. He does not confuse cruelty with command. He does not seek control because he fears losing her. He seeks it because he knows the truth. Without polarity, there is no desire. Without direction, there is no fire. Without strength, love itself becomes weightless and hollow and dies in the silence of resentment. So he builds himself first. He becomes the frame, the center, the gravity that bends the chaos of her storms without breaking under them. He learns to lead without shouting, to command without begging, to hold the line without apology. And when he does, she feels it in her body before her mind can find the words. This is the man she stops testing, because the tests always meet the same immovable answer. This is the man she stops trying to control, because his presence carries the quiet authority of someone who will never yield the core of who he is. This is the man she surrenders to freely, not because she is weak, but because in the presence of his strength, she finally feels free to be what she could not be when she is forced to lead feminine, radiant, chaotic alive. And here Machiavelli would give his final warning, one carved from the cold marble of reality itself. The man who gives away control in the name of love will lose both. But the man who holds control, not as a tyrant, but as a sovereign, will have both, because he understands what neither the modern world nor the soft man it produces will admit. She does not crave control. She craves you, the real you, the one with edges, the one with fire, the one who leads his own life so fully she feels safer with you than with anyone else. Even as she resists you, even as she tests you, even as she swears, she wants the very thing that would kill her desire if you were foolish enough to give it. So the choice stands before you now, sharp as a blade. Remain the man who bends and be forgotten, or become the man who leads and be desired. Because in the theater of love, as in the theater of power, Machiavelli's law never breaks. The prince who commands himself commands the world, and the man who commands himself commands her heart.